a very good morning. Welcome back to Daybreak after that very robust discussion that was happening here with Safin and Ayub. We want to take it to another direction. Today is Wednesday. As if you are an ardent watcher of the show, watcher, I don't know if that word exists, but if you watch the show, you will realize that we talk a lot about matters health, from mental to different, what we call, maybe you can call them specializations. So today, it's not different. We want to talk about type 1 diabetes, and to help us with this discussion, we have a lady and a gentleman. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. And because once again, I know my mother is watching, let's start with the lady so that she knows she taught me well.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm Dr. Priska Mungla, a physician and diabetes specialist, as well as an endocrinologist. I run my practice at Nelson Awori, on 3rd floor in Upper Hill. Okay. And I'm glad to be here because it's a good opportunity because it's actually World Diabetes Awareness Month, so this could not have come at the right time.
Right.
And I think we'll learn a lot during the show.
Right, yeah, we're looking forward to that. And good sir, your good name.
Thank you so much, Willis. My name is Kenneth Chege. I'm a parent to a type 1 diabetes child. He's a boy, around 12, going to 12 years. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I mean, I'm passionate talking about type 1 diabetes because it has affected me directly and my family.
Right.
I know what it means to have a child who has that condition,
right.
What it takes to actually manage it, the challenges, and what it really means for him.
Right.
Yeah.
So that there are different angles to your story because, again, like you said, so there is you as a parent, and I normally feel like mostly sometimes, again, you focus so much on the child, which is, I mean, it's natural for you to focus on your child. That's your baby. And you sometimes forget about yourself. So we'll talk about all those angles as well. All right, so if we also, all right, I guess then we'll start. In that case, let's start with you in terms of when did you find out that it's a boy, right?
Yes.
That your boy has type 1 diabetes.
So this was during COVID period.
2020?
2020. So towards the end of 2020, I guess it started a bit earlier, just that we didn't see the red flags. So what happened is that he would take excessive water. We live in Mombasa. Okay. So Mombasa can get overly hot. So he would take a lot of water before going to bed, and maybe we thought it's normal, it's usual.
Right.
And then he started, he gained a bit of appetite, so he started really eating much. We thought maybe it's his growth.
Right.
He's in a growth part, so he was growing. But what triggered us is one point we realized ants on the bowl of the toilet. So we started seeing ants, and my wife triggered and said, "This is not normal." And what came to her mind was that maybe he could be having an onset of diabetes. When he told me, I was almost in denial. I told her, no, don't even confess such things. Right. I don't think that is right. I mean, let's go to hospital and check. And so we had an appointment with our pediatrician back in Mombasa at Premier Hospital. It's called Dr. Marema. So we went there, and being our doctor, of course, we discussed, and he said, let's first do a test.
Right.
And when the test sugars were done, they came very high. And that is when now he started talking to us and telling us, you know, now it seems like your child is on the onset of type 1 diabetes. As a parent, that was really shocking.
Right.
I've never interacted with this disease or this condition. It was really a shock to both of us. And immediately he was put on insulin and consistently testing his sugar. And then we were able to now get an appointment at Gertrude's with another doctor, Dr. Mkwana, who now has been helping us through. So both doctors have been helping us manage him.
Right.
But it was really a shock, and that is how we realized. And as a parent, really, your child being in that condition, it becomes quite a challenge and quite a big thing. Yeah.
We're going to talk about that, and I mean, at least you'll tell us how it's been, but of course it's difficult for any parent to find out that their child is, you know, going through something mentally, physically, or, you know, being diagnosed like with type 1 diabetes. So from doc, tell us about type 1 diabetes? What's the difference? Because there's type 2. Just paint the picture for us of what it is.
All right. Thank you, Willis. In essence, diabetes is just an elevated blood sugar.
Okay.
So normally when you do a blood test, there's what we call a random blood test, which you can take any time during the day, irrespective of food. So if it's a simple prick, when you do that and your blood sugar is above 11, then we would say you're diabetic. Okay. Or if we do a fasting blood sugar, fasting in this context means that you've not had anything to eat, and it is above 7, then it would be considered to be diabetic. So you find that once you have elevated blood sugar, it can always be classified in 2 ways.
Right.
Either you have type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, or if there is an entity called gestational diabetes. So for context for today, we are looking at type 1 diabetes, and mainly it is due to a situation where the body does not produce enough insulin.
Right.
And insulin is produced by our pancreas. So what insulin does is what allows the body to use every food that you eat in terms of glucose, and then it's taken into the body for utilization.
Right.
So in type 1 diabetes, there's absolute no insulin.
Right.
In type 2 diabetes, which we tend to see in older population, their body has a relative poor response to insulin. So you could be producing the insulin, but the uptake is not very good. Or slowly, as you grow older, you find that the insulin production slowly goes down.
Right.
Then in gestational or diabetes during pregnancy, you find that because of the hormone changes that come about, your body is not able to utilize your blood glucose well, then your sugar goes high.
Right.
Yes. So usually at the time of diagnosis, you tend to find that we would like to put you in every category as much as possible. Some overlap, but this is usually very impactful in terms of treatment.
Right.
Yes.
So he's talked about when one of the telltale signs for them was when they noticed ants around the toilet bowl. Like, so explain to us like what that is and what some of the symptoms are.
Oh yeah, and that is actually a very dramatic presentation.
Right.
Because remember, toilets, latrines are new, relatively new.
Yeah.
So if you're in the village, you'd find that you pass urine by the bush, somewhere just around the corner. And what happens is when your body has this excess glucose and you're not able to utilize it, you pass it out in urine.
Okay.
So your urine, for lack of a better word, is sweet urine.
Right. This is not practical. So people should not try.
Don't try that at home.
That's the way I know.
Yeah, so it's very sweet, very sugary.
Okay.
So that's why when you pass urine, for example, on the ground, the ants would be attracted to it. Yes. But those are not very common presentations. Most of the ones are the ones he's talked about, like you find the child is drinking a lot of water out of the ordinary. And you see, you have to know what your ordinary is to pick what out of the ordinary is. If you take 1-2 glasses, it's okay. But if your baby is always asking you for water all the time, they are passing urine a lot, every 30 minutes, bathroom break. And at times, some you find that an unusual presentation is they just start wetting their bed at night, and they were not doing that before. Then you find they are very tired. So even a playful child who could play out with children most of the time now just feels like they want to sit, they want to sleep. You'd even think your child is lazy, and you start accusing them of being lazy, but it's not the case. Their body is just tired because they don't have glucose. Some also become very irritable, very moody. You notice like performance at work, at school is not at par.
Right.
Then also they just lose weight. Yes, like dramatic weight loss for someone who is not, children are rarely on any diets,
Right.
So they're just shedding off weight. Yes, so you really need to be in tune with your child. Don't ignore some of the symptoms they give you. And because a blood sugar test is very simple, you lose nothing by actually getting it tested.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a question here, just for you. If the question is ready, we can toss it up on the screen so that you can check it out. So basically, we're asking you to send in your feedback and ask your questions as well. So what questions do you have? What questions do you have? What questions do you have around type 1 diabetes? You can SMS on 22422. We'll be able to ask those questions to Doc here, or even if you want to find a parent's perspective, Ken will help you answer some of them. Think about it as a sharing session as well. So if you have some questions, it's 22422, or you can talk to us on Twitter. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. We're going to be sampling some of your questions as we go on the show. Ken, I'd like to ask you, so for you as a parent already, you're scared when you found out that your son has type 1 diabetes. How old was he? That was 10.
He's 11, actually he was 10.
He was 10, right? Yeah. So for him, does he understand what's going on, and how do you get that message across to him?
So at the age that he got diagnosed, at least he's in school, he's able to understand, but he doesn't understand. I mean, he couldn't understand why and what is happening. By the time we caught the condition, he hadn't really advanced in it. Okay. So when he was tested, there are things that there are ketones that develop in your body. So when he was tested, these ketones were not so elevated. So we didn't have to admit him in hospital. I understand when they're very high, then the child has to be admitted. Right. So we didn't have to admit him. We started managing him. And we started, as a parent, first you start understand. I didn't understand, so I'm first shocked. So you can imagine also trying to explain to him, because I'm also trying to understand what is happening. The previous day, things looked normal. Right. Then the day that you got diagnosed, here we are having been given insulin. And insulin you have to administer through an injection. Right. And then you have now to test his sugar. You have to prick his finger. So this changes for him. And I can imagine how he was feeling. He was like, now I have to inject myself. I have to also get pricked almost 4 to 5 times a day to just check my blood sugar. So it has taken us a journey of talking to him, trying to explain to him. And also as parents, trying to come to terms with that, because also, I guess even for parents, you need a bit of counseling. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because the automatic human response is to take care of the child. The child, yes. And so by that doing, forgetting yourself sometimes. Yeah. Exactly. So it took us talking to him, and also now the doctor, as I mentioned earlier, came in very handy in terms of explaining and telling and assuring us that it's okay, we can manage this. And when we came to Nairobi, the doctor that we saw was also very good in terms of encouraging us, and he made it like this happens, it's normal. No, so now how do we manage this? And I remember even him having a session with the doctor and always talking to him. So over the time we have been talking to him and making him understand, and also because of his age, currently he can be able to test himself, he can be able to inject himself with insulin. Actually, even when we are not there, he's able to do that. But of course now, being a 2-year journey has come with a lot of challenges, new challenges, new experiences. And maybe that is what I could also talk more about. Right. Yeah. So type 1 diabetes is it between 12 and 14 years, basically, right? Actually, no. It can happen at any age. Oh, okay. And it has several peaks. We tend to see it in children. There's a peak when you're like almost 6 to 7 years. Then there's another onset at times in people in their late teens, between 14, 17. And actually, we have adults who also present with what is called late onset type 1 diabetes. So these are people who are usually more lean. They are not more on the obese side. Yeah, they tend to have not the typical symptoms, characteristics that we see in those with type 2 diabetes. Right. So it can actually happen anytime. In fact, one of the oldest patients are usually around 40, 45. Oh, wow. So you still have to always keep it at the back of your mind, because you might find someone older, you're treating them with oral medication, but their sugars are just not getting controlled. Then you find that you have to revert to insulin and it will be controlled. And when you test for what are called antibodies, which is what we see typically in type 1, then you find that actually you should have categorized them as type 1 diabetes. So you should always keep an open mind. Don't be restricted with the age limit. Yeah. And when he talked about the line between you need to be admitted, and now he talked about ketones, right? Yeah. That's what he used. Explain to us what that is. Yeah, so remember when we mentioned earlier about what insulin does to the body. So when you're in a situation that you don't have enough insulin,
And that's what happens in type 1 diabetics. Like, they literally don't have any insulin. Your body is not able to utilize that glucose. Okay. So you find that your body is in a state of hunger. So what it does is you need to survive. So it looks for alternative sources of fuel. And that's when now you start burning things like your fat. So you burn fat, it will break down byproducts that, if we measure in blood, are called ketones. And we are lucky that his son was found in what we call, it wasn't an acute stage, because most of the type 1 diabetics come in when they are so sick, and then in a complication that we call diabetic ketoacidosis. So you find the sugar is very high, and what is called the blood or urine ketones are also very elevated. And that is usually an emergency. Most of the time you have to be admitted in the critical unit, the HDU, the ICU, because it is a thin line between literally life and death. And aggressive care is also what saves you. And at that point, you find their discussions are very minimal because it saved the baby fast.
Right.
So you find fluids, insulin, all this, and then later is when now you come to tell the parents that, oh, this was diabetes.
But so for them to come in when they're very sick, why is it? Is it because there is no awareness about type 1, or is it because ile tu ya Wakenya nasikia vibaya lakini nipatie Panadol?
There's that too. There's that too, but it creeps up on you.
Okay.
Yes, like you won't wake up today and your sugar is high.
Right.
It comes slowly, and that's what I was saying. You really need to be in tune with your body, even as adults, okay, and also with your child, because there'll be telltale signs. Telltale. Is that at times, you know, human nature, you try to wish everything away. You'll be like, yesterday he really played outside. It was hot. You know, we've come from a very hot period, so that's why he's drinking a lot of water. He's tired because school is stressful. Yes. He's losing weight because maybe he's playing so much, he's not eating, but the signs are always there. So you find that it's a gradual process until by the time you reach that point of no return, when you're rushing to hospital, and things are found when they're a bit critical.
It's a bit too...
Not too late.
Yeah, too late. Okay. So you talked about just explaining like what it means. If there is a parent out there, because we, you know, there are many sets of people who are watching us who maybe just recently found out, or even has been at it maybe now a year, 6 months, 3 months. What would you advise them to do based on your now 2 years experience of how they can manage, you know, like you're saying, things like, I personally fear needles. So you can imagine for, you know, disrupting a schedule, like you're saying, test 4 times, inject yourself. How does a parent handle that? And both ways. So start with, even as a parent, what did that mean for you and your wife?
So in terms of management, I think for maybe somebody who's slightly older, it could be a bit better because like my son doesn't really fear needles.
Right.
So it was a bit easier for him.
Good for him.
I recently talked to a parent like 2 weeks ago whose daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The daughter is about 1.5 years. So you can imagine the age. And the parent was telling me, you know, my daughter doesn't want to see anyone in white because they think it's a medic and they're coming to take my blood. So for a parent of that nature, I think what you really need, I mean, it becomes quite a tough situation. And I would say management of diabetes in Kenya, we have a long way to go. Like I can't afford to buy insulin and the testing strips, but not everyone who can. So it becomes quite a big challenge. What we've been desiring even to get for our son is a CGM, a continuous glucose monitoring gadget that you put on your hand. I think some of you, I saw something circulating in social media about Kipchoge, wearing one monitors glucose, and I saw an interview. So a similar gadget that really, once you put it on your hand, you're able to monitor your glucose.
So then that does away with the 4 times a day testing.
Exactly. And the 4 times is just a minimum. I mean, like my son have to battle anxieties as well. So when he sees his sugar is going down, he can even test almost 10 times in a day. Even in a span of 15 minutes, he keeps on pricking and thinking my sugar is going down, my sugar is going down. And he knows if it goes below 4, then it becomes quite an emergency. I mean, it's an emergency. He really has to take something sweet to make it come up again. So for a parent of that nature, I think just the cost inhibits it, but it's better to have such a gadget.
The gadget is Pretty expensive?
It's pretty expensive because on average you'd have to spend around 25 to 30,000 a month.
A month?
A month.
Wow.
Because the management is also not easy. It's quite expensive. And so for the parent who is able to afford, they can be able to have that. And for the ones who can't, I think they just have to manage it in terms of pricking. I'm really also learning in terms of trying to find out what really happens for the very young children. How do you talk to them? How do you make... Well, the process is fairly painless, because it also depends with the needle. It's a very small needle. It's fairly painless. But once in a while, you'd find that he feels a bit of pain, and you really have to talk to him and comfort him and, counsel them as well. So for a parent who is in that stage, and especially dealing with an age of an age of my son, because now I would speak from my son's point of view.
Right.
Is talk to them, make them understand, make them know that they are not alone. And also counseling comes in very handy because... For
both of you?
Yes, for both of us.
For the parents and the child?
Exactly. Like I realized also as a father, I really also need a bit of counseling because it's at times you sit and think about it and you really feel weighed down and you're like, hey, this condition is really weighing down on me. Then you can imagine now about the child. He has to balance his education, he has to be in school, he has to play, he has to do all these things. In the midst of that, he has to keep on testing his sugar. And the other challenge is not just testing the sugar. You have to think about his diet. The diet has to change.
That's what I was going to ask Doc in a while, yeah.
The diet has to change.
Right.
Before you would go in the supermarket, you'd look at some of the content of what you're eating. I mean, we rarely do that. But now you have to really check the carbs because the carbs is really what triggers the high sugars.
Right.
So for a parent who is really managing that, some of those are the key pointers that they really have to look at. Get counseling for the child. Talk to the child, and also as a parent, try to get counseling yourself so that you're able to manage this, because it's really the management part of it that really matters.
All right, we have some people have sent in some questions. We're going to jump into that in a while, but before that, you can prepare them. But before that, so Doc, what changes in terms of diet? And these are just things I've heard. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, then the high sugar products, sodas, etc., are a no-no. And also, apparently, and this happened to me the other day when I was going for my nutrition check, apparently you can't have 4 tangerines. Hata kama unatafuta vitamin C. Well, so like what does somebody, what does that diet look like, and what are the things to have and the things to avoid?
So the diet is usually, as he said, is usually very key in terms of sugar control.
Right.
And it's also the most difficult to adjust to, because you can imagine you've grown up with a certain diet, then all of a sudden you have to change it. And what usually is very key is avoiding the foods that raise your blood sugar quickly. And you see some of the very sweet things are very high in refined sugar. So you will take, like, for example, if you took a soda now, your sugars would spike very fast. So you find that we tend to, one of the things we do is work closely with a nutritionist, because we need to tell you what can you eat, what can't you eat. And you find that the carbohydrates is what really has to come down in your diet, so that you opt for healthier options, which have, we tend to call them like a lower glycemic index, which means that you'll eat them, they'll keep you full for longer and don't raise your sugar as high. And they're the whole grain options, which are brown ugali, brown rice, brown chapati, but also the portions really matter. In type 1 diabetes, it's even more critical because you're already on insulin. So you see, the way he was talking about this, there's a complex calculation. It's called carbohydrate counting. So you're taught that if you buy even a packet of pasta, you never look at the fine print, but there they tell you each gram contains this amount of carbs. So you're supposed to extrapolate that how much are you going to take, 1 serving, 2 servings, and you adjust your insulin accordingly. Yeah. And then also the fruits. 4 tangerines is too much, even if you want to keep COVID away. But now you're taught that you just need to be satisfied with maybe just, you see, once you've peeled it out, 2 or 3 slices, and that's enough.
Of the tangerine?
Of the tangerine. A small slice of a mango, that's enough.
Right.
Yes, because you have to balance.
Okay.
Yes, otherwise your sugars will spike. You will panic. Now you'll be tempted to increase your insulin. At times you can increase the insulin, the sugars go low again. So we tend to say reduce carbs, more vegetables and more of the lean proteins, which is chicken, fish, some of the plant-based proteins. Then we also teach them on small, healthy diets, yes, so that you're not always going for that big meal at once that will elevate your sugar. But it's always an ongoing discussion. So you find that every time the patient comes to the clinic, you always reinforce nutrition, you always reinforce diet at every stage, and then you see also where they've gone wrong.
Right.
So that's why as much as they test frequently, you also look at that chart, and at times you'll find at certain points they've done well, certain points not, and you ask, and they'll tell you, here maybe I ate a chocolate, here I did this. Yes, I know they're also children, so you can't be spanking them all the time. Yeah. So you give to take. Yeah, but nutrition still remains very key in terms of diabetes management.
Do you think, like you said, that we have a long way to go in terms of, I mean, probably we have already come from somewhere.
Yes.
But like making some of these things available, the pricings, is there something that you think can be done, or like what do you suggest? And even just, I guess, even just awareness, yeah. Yeah,
awareness, we are really working on it. And you know, you can never have enough information. And that's why, like on November, we keep pushing. And you find even throughout the year, there are always advocacies for wellness checks and all that, so that any opportunity you get your blood sugar checked.
Right.
Yeah. But in terms of especially our children with type 1 diabetes, a lot is being done for them. So you find that not all of them can afford insulin. Yes, there are even different types of insulin. There are those that use the syringes. There are fancier ones like the pens, which are more discreet, easy to carry. So there are organizations like Diabetes Management Organization that try to make these things free. And even in Kenyatta, especially for children who are under 25, to just make it easy and accessible for them, because they don't have an option. It's this insulin or no, or nothing at all. Right. Then you find technology is also improving. So you see in the West, there are the gadgets like he was talking about, a CGM. It's called continuous glucose monitoring, and there are also insulin pumps. The issue is the cost, but they are amazing because they are implanted under the skin, and they give you all that insulin. It's set, so it will know that this is what is called your basal insulin. It gives you that slowly over the day, and it knows when you're going to eat, and it gives you bolus injections. So you're not always checking, injecting, checking, injecting, and it also monitors your sugars. It can tell when it is high, it reduces the dose. It increases the dose, sorry. If it is low, it reduces the dose. Issue now is cost and accessibility, but hopefully we'll get there.
And it's not something that's bulky, right?
No.
Okay.
Even your mic is bulkier than
I don't want to be walking around again, because especially if they're children. Yeah.
No,
I know children can be mean.
Yes.
We'll talk about that as well.
And actually, that's why this is something good and exciting, because now they're able to live their lives. They can participate in sports. They don't have to feel isolated or segregated when they're going for their shots from time to time. Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at some of the questions there. Or other comments and feedback that you are bringing in, then we can respond to them if we, or not we, rather they can respond to them. All right, let's put it up there. So somebody asks, what happens when one's pancreas is removed due to cyst infections?
So normally what happens is they might not remove the entire pancreas, and it usually depends on which part of the pancreas is involved. So most of the time they'll try to stay clear of the part that secretes the insulin hormones, so you'll most of the time have enough. But the pancreas is one of those sensitive organs that people don't want to touch unless you really, really have to. Yes.
All right. So you have someone who says, good morning, my name is Sarah. I was diagnosed when I was 38 years with type 1 diabetes when COVID cases were severe. There is no family history of the diabetes except on my grandmother's maternal side. Is it, if you have somebody in the family, like he says, my grandmother's, or she says rather, her grandmother's maternal side, is it that if you have it in your family somewhere along the line, you might get it, or are you at higher risk of getting it, or is it genetic? Like what's the...
So with diabetes, genetics do play a risk, especially in type 1 diabetes, because your body essentially attacks itself. So your body generates what we call antibodies, which are normally your white cells. So they start fighting your pancreatic cells, especially the islet cells, the ones that secrete the insulin. So you find there are certain genes that if you possess, your risk of diabetes, getting diabetes is higher. But we might, let's say, be a family, like we are a family of 5. One might have diabetes, but not everyone has, because it's also postulated that there are other environmental factors like viruses, that you might contract a virus somewhere along the line, then your immunity goes haywire and such like things. But it just alerts you that you need to be more careful. But even with a family history, not everyone will necessarily get diabetes.
Yeah. All right. So I said, hey, I'm 35 years with type 1 diabetes since 2018. Is it risky to get pregnant with this condition? Can I risk my pregnancy?
So in fact, those are good questions, because you see, when they're diagnosed younger, they'll grow older. And you expect them, these are natural phases of life. You'll expect them to meet someone they like, get pregnant along the way. And usually what we aim for is to make the pregnancy as safe as possible. And at times before you do that is you have to discuss with your doctor closely to ensure your sugars are within range before you conceive, so that before you get pregnant, we are at target. And we've checked all your organs, there are no complications, we've checked your eyes, everything, we are safe. Then during the pregnancy, now it's just a matter of close monitoring and adjusting your insulin as need be, because I had mentioned earlier, with the hormones, your blood sugars tend to go higher. So your doses of insulin increases and increases as we go along. Then once we deliver, we tend to revert back to what we were. So these days, because of also active and good obstetric care, you find that we are able to deliver babies and children safely and healthy with very minimal risk.
So you can, all right.
Yes.
This question, so please, by all means, get to doing the work of the Lord, get pregnant. So what are the early signs of diabetes? Somebody says, I think we talked about some of them, but you've mentioned here, like you said, for the pregnant lady, you check the eyes. What are you looking for?
So those are usually like complications of diabetes.
Okay.
Yes, and if you've had diabetes for a long time, now there are complications you always have to look for. Some tend to be, lack of a better word, exaggerated in pregnancy, for example. So like the eye complications, they're what we call retinopathy. So you just go to a specialist ophthalmologist. There's a way they, not an optician, ophthalmologist. Yes. So they look at the back of your eye and they tend to see if there are any changes that have happened because of your long-standing diabetes. And there's medication that they give for that to sort of slow it down. Because if left untreated, complications like blindness can occur, yes. So that's why your follow-up with your doctor is very important. And you see, it's not just the eyes, things like the kidneys, the heart, the nerves, all get affected in the long run. So those are things that we have to keep monitoring as we go along.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, someone says, my daughter got gestational diabetes, and even after delivery, 6 years down the line, she's still diabetic. She asked, will she get healed?
So healing is a strong word. So normally what we aim for is not healing but control. Okay. Yes. So
what does control look like?
Control just means that your sugar should be within range, like someone who does not have diabetes. Yes. And gestational diabetes, which is diabetes in pregnancy, you find that there are those who after delivery it clears, but they still remain at risk, which means some years down the line they can still get diabetes again. But there are those we see that you get diagnosed with diabetes in pregnancy, even after you've delivered, the diabetes still lingers on, yes. So they're usually either of those two. Right. And the treatment is still the same. Okay. You aim to control their sugars and continue now with your medication.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know there are more questions, but I want to ask Ken, Ibra, before we go to that one, let me ask Ken a question here. So we talked about it. So we've talked about you, we've talked about the kid, but your son has friends and he's going to school. And I don't know about the dynamics about timings of the injections and stuff like that. Is it important to, explain to the school and to some of his close friends, to tell them like this is what's happening?
It's very important. because you realize even kids can get into depression
Right.
in case they get mocked. And I think as they get older, also management becomes tougher because some of them don't want to be seen as though they're injecting or even testing sugar. I remember one time my wife shared with me a scenario. They were in a sitting in church and they were having a discussion in kids' church. And one of the other children, I think, my son is so used to it that whenever he feels like he's getting a low, he would want to prick even in front of people and check. So one of the children was like, why do you have to test in front of, why do you have to show that you have this thing? Like to me, like, could you move out and do it outside? But you see, if that comes, that he might feel a bit, he might actually feel bad about it.
Right.
The good thing is that he's gotten used to it, that even if you ask him, he says, I'm okay, I get this a lot and I'm used to it. So for us, it has taken talking to the friends, especially the close friends, and they even know what to do in case there is an emergency. In case his sugar is really low and he's panicking, then they know, look for sugar, look for honey, look for something sweet, and then that will elevate his sugar. So it takes for the parent to really talk to the children around him. And even when he goes to school, they understand and they know what he's going through. The creating of awareness is very important. Right. Because you might find children will always mock each other. And they can get to a point where the child now starts feeling the burden. Like why did I get this thing? Why is everyone looking at me differently? So really talking to the parents even around, talking to the children around, because some of them don't understand what this is and what it really means to manage this. Right. And you find some of them even now start talking about it and with the other kids and letting them know this is what happens. So-and-so has this condition and this is how we need to manage him. Other than that, I think he lives a very normal life. You would never know that he has diabetes. He will play normally. He will cycle. He loves football. He will watch football, he'll go play football outside. Sometimes he'll wake up at 6 in the morning with his friends, go to the field and play football. Oh, wow. And he'll do all these things. He will go for swimming. You would never know that he has diabetes unless you see him testing or injecting. So it's really what the doctor said, that really management of this is really key and very important. Creating awareness is very important. I remember when we started this process, my wife and I got a burden of making people more aware. And we started a campaign back in Mombasa called Dash for D, Dash for Diabetes. So it's more of a campaign that we do every year. This coming Saturday we'll be having one. What does it entail? So this particular one entails just creating awareness around diabetes. Okay. Making sure that the people understand what diabetes is, passing out the messages. So we run a whole campaign, a whole month of sending even short clips of information like what the doctor was talking about in terms of how do you manage this, what does this mean? It's a condition like any other condition. And actually, on this event, actually, we make it fun in terms of it's a walk, it's a run, it's a cycling event, it's a skating event. And this year we're even including an art event. People to just come and get more aware about diabetes. Because you realize when you start now talking about this, more people start coming up. As Doc said, I think in terms of viruses, for our family background, I don't think we have the background on diabetes. Okay. We tend to think because of COVID, that's when it was triggered. And maybe statistics could tell more, and research could be done in this area. Especially with the onset of COVID, there seem to have been had a spike in terms of the number of cases in terms of diabetes type 1. So it's really a management, talking to the friends, making people aware, and they're getting used to it, so that when you find somebody who is even presenting this kind of symptoms, even at school, if a teacher recognizes that this particular child is going out frequently to the toilet, they are very thirsty always, it becomes a trigger also for the teacher or for the parent to actually now know something is amiss, we need to test the sugar.
To check it out. All right, I'm told there's so many questions that are coming in, and you'll tell us a little bit more about this. Dash for D is in Mombasa?
Yes, it's in Mombasa.
Okay. We're going to talk more about that in a while. Here's the question. Someone says, my neighbor injects her 14-year-old child with insulin who keeps getting hypoglycemic, did I pronounce it right? Attacks. Kindly highlight how to correct this and how to prevent.
So that's actually a very common complication, especially for patients who are on insulin. Hypoglycemic attack just means that generally your blood sugar has gone really low.
Yeah.
And we don't like that because it has stages of the levels going low. And you find that it might reach a point that your sugar is low and you're not even aware about it. So at times, one of two things is a possibility. Either you're giving the child too much insulin, so you might need to discuss with your doctor and say these attacks are frequent and you get your dose adjusted downwards. Or two, maybe you're not feeding enough.
Right.
So you find that at 14, they are also a bit conscious also about their physique, their diet and all that. So you might find they're not eating enough but injecting that same amount of insulin, so the blood sugar goes low.
Right.
So that's one of those things that you really need to discuss with your doctor so that you see how to adjust your insulin. But importantly is also to educate them on what to do when that happens, which, as he had correctly talked about, is one, if they're in school, everyone needs to be aware. It shouldn't be a secret that they're diabetic. There's a lot of stigma, but we are aiming to sort of destigmatize diabetes, so that even some children even wear wristbands. The teacher needs to be aware, the school nurse needs to be aware, your desk mate needs to be aware, and they need to know what to do. And knowing what to do is easily giving you something sugary quickly to take. That can be in form of juice, it can be in form of milk, it can be in form of even sweet. That's the time we allow candy or your tangerines. Yes. So the babies, the children always need to carry a snack for just in case. Yeah. So I think it would be good for them to get a chat with their doctor to see how to adjust their insulin doses. Yeah.
All right. Hold on. Let me put my mic back on. All right, mic is on. Musi panic. It's blowing my nose. All right, kindly ask Madame. Is Madame Doctor. Is it possible for diabetes to be transferred to a child who was born already with it and was treated immediately? I don't know if I understand the question. But yeah, I don't know if I understand the question as well. Is it possible for diabetes to be transferred to a child who was born already with it and was treated immediately? So I guess they were born and they found out and treatment started.
Okay, interesting question, but I don't know if they mean that the mom had diabetes.
I think probably.
Yeah, then you see you deliver a baby. What happens in the immediate delivery period is the baby will not have diabetes, but because if the mother's sugars were not well controlled during that period of pregnancy, the baby will have this excess exposure to glucose, so they'll have excess production of their own insulin. So when they are born, they tend to have very low sugars. First, they're very big babies, like almost 4.5 kilos.
Right.
Yeah, and then they are, so they tend to get these hypoglycemic episodes that have to be corrected over time until their body sort of adjusts. But diabetes is not one of those things that can be transmitted like from the mother to the baby through the placenta, for example.
Why would they be bigger babies?
They're big because now, remember, food and hormones move from the mother to the baby through the special membrane called the placenta.
Right.
So if the mother's glucose is always high, this means this excess glucose is transferred to the baby. When this excess glucose is transferred to the baby secretes more insulin because it's like, oh my God, we have so much in abundance.
Right.
So it will produce excess insulin, which will keep absorbing this glucose and storing it, and it will just be stored mostly as fat. Yes, so you find they are big babies, but they're not necessarily very healthy babies. Yeah.
Right. Hi, I use Glucomet and I take it once a day. Is it medication for type 1 diabetes? I'm 35 years old, so somehow they got this Glucomet. So they're just wanting to confirm, they're taking the right thing.
So let's be clear. Type 1 diabetes, there is no role for oral medication.
Oh.
Yes, it's insulin, and the various forms of insulin.
Wow.
So by the time he's on oral medication, the Glucomet, most probably he's a type 2 diabetic.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully that clarifies it for you. Pamela from Loitoktok in Kajiado County is asking, can diabetes bring, I think, convulsions, because last month I fainted like 4 times and was treated.
If she's diabetic, then those would signify what we were discussing earlier, the hypoglycemic episodes. So it would be important that in those episodes of convulsion, fainting, or loss of consciousness, her sugars are checked. because if indeed they are, then that is one of it's a big issue that needs to be discussed with the doctor, because frequent hypoglycemic episodes have been shown to also give what we call cognitive impairment in the long run, and also is associated with increased risks of mortality in the long run.
So if she's, like she said, has is 4 times.
She needs to get checked. She needs to get checked. Yeah.
All right. So Pamela, please get checked from Lloyd Talk. The last one, someone's asking the name of the gadget one more time and where possibly they can get it. Maybe you can tell them again.
So it's called a CGM,
okay.
A continuous glucose monitor. And basically, there are companies that do provide this. There's one that's called Libra. And there are many that are out there in the market. The unfortunate thing is that, as I said, I've been trying to get one for my son. First of all, the cost is very inhibiting,
right?
Because I said it's about 25,000 to 30,000 a month. On top of that, add the insulin, add the testing strips, and so you'd have to bring it. You'd have to import it. I think very few people do import them, but also the cost must be really high.
Right.
So you'd have to get someone to bring it for you. And since it's something that you need to keep on using all the time. I have a friend in Mombasa whose son is around 3, 4, who uses it. So for them, I think they're able to buy and bring it. So you can do it individually and have it here, and be able to actually now use it. Remember, it's something that you use every 14 days because it's like a clock. You put it inside it on the first day, on the 14th day it goes off. Then you have to remove it and insert. There's one time I tested it on my son, and it really works very well, because it doesn't need to prick. It has a monitor that looks like a glucometer that you just place it next to it, and it can give you the readings for the sugar. It tells you when the sugar is going up, when the sugar is on a constant, or when the sugar is going down. So at least the child is aware and know what to do. The cost of it is what is inhibiting.
Right.
Getting it in the market. It's not something that you go to the chemist and buy and go to the counter and say, can I get a CGM? No. You have to really have it here.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for Saturday, you said this Saturday.
This coming
So
Saturday.
if somebody walks into the event, what are they seeing? What's going on?
So the event will be done at the pavilion, Butterfly Pavilion.
Okay.
That's now formerly Butterfly. Now it's Bamburi Forest Trail. So when they get in, we will have a flagging of activity, maybe some 1 or 2 speeches from people who can talk about this, and then a flag off, because the premises itself is set in a way that you can do the 10-kilometer run or cycling. There's a 5-kilometer one, there's a 3-kilometer one. So it depends really on how you feel you want to do it. If you want to do the cycling, if you want to do the walking, if you want to do just leisure walking. And once that is done, then we'll have another event where we'll do an art. We are also partnering with a studio called Bella Bella Studio. The Bella Bella Studio, they really bring together the artists in terms of how people can express themselves through art. So we are partnering with them. They'll bring their volunteers. Then people who have registered for the art, they can draw. And the theme will be for type 1 diabetes. So they can draw a theme around that. And just by doing that also, they are getting to learn more about type 1 diabetes.
Are there tickets?
So the charges are 1,000. Okay. The 1,000 covers a T-shirt. It will cover a free test. It will cover the art event. So really the 1,000 is to just get you there. It will cover the charges to get in. When you calculate, it's actually more, but we've gotten various sponsors that have also come alongside with us to help us subsidize this. All we want to do is be able to send the word out there.
Right.
And then on the 26th, we also been targeting teachers in Mombasa.
26th of November?
26th of November. That's teachers around Bamburi, around Nyali. Teachers are so many, so we just want to try 100 of them. As I said, this is a growing initiative, so we want them also to be sensitized around type 1 diabetes. I mean, your child spends more time with the teachers as they do with you. And sometimes even they spend more time with your child than you do.
Right.
Because when they come back home, they're tired, they go to bed. So the teacher can notice some of these signs and symptoms, and they can be able to trigger and realize something is not right here. Can we do something? As Doc said, you need to actually diagnose this as early as possible. Otherwise, if it's too late, it's a matter of life and death.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, first of all, finally, I'd just like to say, because of course we're out of time, but thank you so much for sharing your story. We realize TV is a big platform. There are many people who know your face in Mombasa and now in the country. And so for you to share that, and now who by extension know your son, You know, we wish you and your son and your family the best, and hopefully the event is going to be a success both now and on 26th. So continue doing what you're doing. Doc, if people want to get in touch with you, because I'm told there are so many more other questions, how can they get a hold of you, whether it's on social media or whatever you want to, the information you're willing to give?
So I can be reached on social media,
right.
And I'll also share with you the clinic contacts as well, which I'm sure you can share. But my clinic,
can say them.
Yeah, my clinic is based at Nelson Awori.
Right.
That's in Upper Hill on 3rd floor on suite A5. Yeah, the contacts are 0738 809172.
One more time.
0738 0738 809172.
Okay.
Then I can also be reached on Twitter. It's at P Mungla. P Mungla.
Mungla. M-U-N-G-L-A.
M-U-N-G-L-A. There's no letter missing.
Okay. All right.
And also on Instagram at Priska_Mungla. And also I run a social media page known as Beat Diabetes. Beat Diabetes. Yes.
Right, yeah. I think personally, when this topic was coming up for myself and for one Ibra, it was very interesting for us to, you know, type 1 diabetes, and even the way it is pronounced, you know, we say diabetes type 1 or type 1 diabetes. I think it's important to get awareness out as much as you can. So I do advise you, unaenda muone doc pale hivyo. Namba amepeana ni ya clinic tafadhali. So muulize tu maswali za clinic. And then for maswali ingine. And for you, how can they get in touch with you? Probably there are people in Mombasa who...
Yeah, so for me, my number is 0721 92 335. I'm open for counseling, and I'm not a counselor, but I'm open to sharing my experience.
Right.
I think sharing the experience is good because we walk the journey together.
Right.
Like the parent I say that I talked to.
Yeah.
And we're also trying to see whether we can build more support groups. Because what happens is when you get diagnosed, when the child gets diagnosed, it's total confusion for the parent. It's total devastation. You feel like I'm not... I asked somebody the other day, how many people do you know that have type 1 diabetes? And they couldn't even count one. So you feel alone. You feel like this is something that is so strange to you. But it always helps to have people around you who you can always walk the journey with, talking about some of these solutions. How do you handle this? How do you handle the issues of anxieties? As I said, my son started getting anxieties because every time the sugar goes low, he becomes anxious. He wants to prick more times. He wants to eat a lot of sugar. And now he also wanted now to ensure that his sugar is always high, which also now brings the risks that Doc talked about.
Right.
So I'm open for discussions.
And on social media?
On social media, I'm Kenneth Chege on Facebook. The others maybe not, but at least I can be reached at 0721 92 335.
0721 92 335.
Yes.
All right. Well, I do hope that they reach out. I do hope the event is a success. I hope more people go to Nelson Awori and get more information. Like we say, information is power. And I hope that hopefully those of you who asked the questions, you know, you are now satisfied in one way, shape, or form. Pamela, I will remind you again to go and get checked from Loitok, because the 4 times a day of fainting, Doc amesema si sawa sana. So organize to get checked, and hopefully you'll be okay. And we wish both of you all the best. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your feedback and the questions. We appreciate as well for that. Tuonane kesho. Sasa kesho tunatia ndani. Tunafanya kukura. Chef atakuwa amekuja pale, tutatia ndani. Sijui kama nielewa. So we should get somebody from Mombasa. By the way, ukienda Mombasa, wacha nitatuma Chef Alia kuja kuone. Chef Alia anafaa kurudi hata tupikie meal moja, swali mkate wa baba, mahamri, hiyo ingine inaitwa nini? Hiyo viazi karai, katlesi. Samaki wa kupaka. Hiyo ni America anasema. All right. Thank you so much. We do appreciate. Do get checked. Remember to love yourself, and loving yourself means getting checked because your health is important. Peace and love.